Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here, man, a fun conversation with one of my favorite local guys, Tim Seeley. You know, I've really enjoyed my friendship with Tim. It dates back around the time of the podcast. That's when we kind of met, when he was still at Devil's Due, working on things like G.I. Joe and the like. And it's just been a pleasure watching Tim create incredible stories, sometimes with his buddy Mike Norton, things like Loaded Bible, and also the great series Revival that just wrapped up last year, an incredible Image series. And we've got a really great conversation to talk about a lot of things, including Dark Red, a new Aftershock comic that he has. It features a vampire living in rural America. That's kind of Tim's milieu. He grew up in kind of rural Wisconsin, and it's good. It's an untapped environment, I think. You know, only guys like him and Lemire, I think, are really starting to get into that area. Josh Fialkoff, also back in the day with Elks Run. But really good stuff. And it's a great new series from Tim. We talk about that. Of course, he's doing excellent work for DC as well. He just wrapped up the Masters of the Universe versus the Injustice League. You know that from the video game, and it's a very, very funny story, and just a great idea, and pretty crazy stuff. And who better to do it than a guy like Tim Seeley? He also talks about his work that he did on the Walmart Wonder Woman books, and also he's doing the Walmart Swamp Thing series. Pretty neat stuff. He also has a new X-Men series tying into the current big event at Marvel. We talk about all of that and more, and also just his thoughts on the business, because Tim's an active creator-owned guy. Hack Slash has obviously been one of his babies forever, and he's not only put out Hack Slash books himself, but he's turned the book over to other creators. We talk a bit about when Teenie Howard was writing the series, but it's always good to get the temperature of the market from a guy like Tim Seeley, and that's our subject for today on Word Balloon. It's all brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, League, for your continued support via Patreon. Everyone has been great, and I thank you very much for subscribing to Word Balloon. If you'd like to join the cause and think Word Balloon is worthy of your attention, you can go to patreon.com/wordballoon, or go to wordballoon.com and click on the Patreon ad, and it will take you to my Patreon page. Thank you very, very much for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics, the industry's fastest-growing independent publishing company. They're promoting both new and established comic audiences to read dangerously this year. They're calling it the Year of Reading Dangerously. As a publisher of many of the most talked-about independent titles of the past few years, things like A Walk Through Hell from Garth Ennis, Marguerite Bennett's Animosity, Dark Ark from Cullen Bunn and Juan Doe, Donny Cates' Baby Teeth, Aftershock continues to push the envelope further this year with new releases and ongoing series that continue to thrill, chill, and challenge both imaginations and sensibilities. They're working with top writers and artists and some of the brightest new stars in the creative community. Some of the new titles coming this year: Stronghold with Phil Hester and Ryan Kelly, Oberon, a new Supernatural series by Ryan Parrott. Of course, we're talking about Dark Red today from Tim Seeley. Out of the Blue and Horde, just to name a few of these titles. They will cut across all genres and take readers far beyond their comfort zones. Now, in the weeks ahead, we'll be talking to more Aftershock creators about their books, but you don't have to wait. Check out full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on these books to order through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Okay, without further ado, let's get into our conversation with Tim Seeley, now on Word Balloon. I am thrilled to welcome Tim Seeley back to Word Balloon, as always. It's funny, we're local guys, and we see each other a lot, but, I'm sorry, we should talk more than we do. It's been a while. I think the lunch conversation might have been the last time we podcasted. Did we have one since then?
Last Christmas. We did our I thought it was going to be an annual Christmas thing, John, and then you had to go and another Christmas we'll sit down and have drinks besides the fireplace in
here.
Wearing just our bathrobes. It'll be really, really romantic and warm.
That's true. We are speaking during, however, the polar vortex that has trapped Chicago. It's the second day, so it's not as intense as it was the first day, but it's intense enough.
It is pretty intense. I've seen some cold shit, but this is really up there.
Yeah, man. Well, you've got a lot of great projects as far as current and future stuff. But before we get to all that, I did want to acknowledge the Injustice versus Masters of the Universe crossover, because we know from previous conversations that you're quite the He-Man fan, you and your brother, and you did that excellent coffee table book about the art of He-Man and everything. So yeah, and I love the Injustice take on the DC universe. It's a great parallel universe, and it's angrier versions of the characters. And got it at one time. I think it was the best Justice League book that was out there when Tom Taylor was writing it. So tell me about putting these two worlds together.
Yeah, I mean, when DC asked me, I got an email from Christy Quinn which just said, "Hey, we know you always wanted to do He-Man with us. Are you ready?" And I was like, "Yes." And then they said, "It's a crossover with Injustice." And I was like, "What?" And then, so it took me maybe a couple hours, and I was just kind of wandering around, I don't know if that's kind of how I wanted to do this. And there's been crossovers with Superman and DC Universe before. And then,
well, yeah, that was the first one of the first DC Comics Presents was Superman and He-Man, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was one of the first comics I ever got. Actually, was that comic
hilarious, fantastic.
So that was one of the motivations, and the other one was I had the idea, which was, wait, if Superman is bad, then He-Man takes his place in this story. He's the one who has to convince Superman that he's wrong. I mean, He-Man is the pure sort of soul in this story that Batman isn't and could never be, and that this Superman isn't. So the idea then had to be this flip where, He-Man is the good and pure, and he's the DC universe basically of this story, and he's put in this interaction with the much darker Injustice you. But it was, it ended up being a lot of fun to work on, and I actually really loved it. I actually ended up really having a lot of affection for the Injustice stuff. Tom Taylor stuff, and also the guys over at NetherRealm. I got to meet those guys, and just the amount of work and story they put into this thing is kind of incredible. So I got to hang out with one of their storyboard directors, this guy Dominic, and he explained kind of what they were going for, and I think I finally kind of got it. When it originally came out, I think Injustice to me was I don't want bad Superman. I don't have any interest in bad Superman ever. But when I sort of heard people talk about it and how I could use that to tell a story about heroism and about being good, I think it finally came around for me.
That's cool. Is this its own thing? I mean, was there any reference to the former team up or crossover between He-Man and Superman?
No, it's its own thing. I mean, it's
okay.
Set in the Injustice universe, so it comes after Game 2.
Okay.
And it comes after. There's two endings, so it comes after the what they call the bad ending, and at this point, I mean, it's Injustice 2's been out for a while. Because I don't even know. I mean, I've only watched. I'm one of these idiots that cannot handle a PlayStation a game controller, and I remember trying to play Batman Arkham City, and all I could really do is make Batman walk in a circle. And I'm just all right, I think, maybe it's time to stop trying to play video games. It's all right, or I'll take a crash course at some point. But I love the stories, and I have no idea. Tell me what the ending of Injustice 2 was, the bad ending. Well, the Injustice 2 ending is basically, that the Batman and Superman team up to fight Brainiac, and then in the bad ending, Brainiac loses, but Superman takes control of all his technology and uses it to enslave everybody. Including Batman. Yeah. Wow. So our story picks up from the bad ending. Basically, the DC universe was overtaken by Superman and Brainiac's technology, and there's a small group of rebels left over, and they've kind of been on the run, running through the multiverse, basically with the help of Zatanna and Swamp Thing as kind of refugees from Superman's regime, and they're looking for someone who can help them, and they end up on Eternia, and they find this guy who's as good as Superman used to be. And he has a big magic sword, and they're like, "This is our guy." So that's sort of the plot, Then they bring him back to Earth. Meanwhile, we find out that Darkseid actually has kind of been waiting for He-Man to leave because he wants Grayskull, because it has inside it the anti-life equation. So there you go.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
Jesus, that's fantastic, man. Hilarious.
Yeah, it's like the best. I think it's the best thing I've written as far as superhero stuff goes, for sure. And it's, I mean, like, I took it seriously. I didn't really make fun of anything. I think that would be the easy way out, to sort of be like, oh, this kid stuff, and but or try to gritty He-Man up, which I also didn't do. So I think it really works. I mean, I'm super proud of it. Freddie Williams did amazing work on it, and I think, like, overall, it's the best reaction I've gotten from readers ever, I think.
Really?
Because I think so, for sure. I mean, maybe besides, create our own stuff. So I feel like I was kind of worried about it, but I think it turned out. I mean, I'm happy with it. I'm really excited that they're putting a trade out in April. I hope people read it after they've heard good stuff about it. So, I mean, I think it fits in. If you liked Injustice, it fits in completely with the game, and if you like He-Man, it fits in completely with that too.
That's excellent, man. And again, I know your love for the He-Man universe, and certainly your love for superheroes. So you were the right guy for this, and that sounds terrific. I'm glad that the fans have responded positively, and it did. That is kind of a tough assignment, so I give you credit for making it happen. That's awesome. Well done.
I had lots of training, so like I feel like every once in a while you get that thing where you're like, oh, I might be one of the few people who can do this. So it was one of those cases. Everything else, you could probably get somebody else to do this, but this, you might need me for this one.
I would say so. Did you talk to Steve like throughout and everything, and like just to have somebody to sound off on, and everything? Yeah,
and I would always send him like the moments. I basically used my brother as a test audience, because I sent him this page, which was spoiler, but at the end you see the character Zodak flying through the cosmos with Metron. They're both in their chairs and like they're going through space and they're partners now. And I sent him my brother and he was like, holy fuck. And I knew I did it.
That's awesome, man. That's great. I've never asked you, because you're also an artist, and I know you don't draw as much as you used to. But when you submit scripts to artists and stuff, do you ever like give breakdowns or go, I see it this way? Or are you totally like, nope, full script, the artist knows what he's doing, do your thing?
Yeah, mostly. I almost always give them full script. But so for Dark Red, I actually did do layouts for it. So I kind of wrote it. I wrote it sort of in a fusion of script and I did the layouts kind of at the same time. And then I gave that to Corin, and she worked from my layouts with this sort of script. And then while she was drawing it, I rewrote the dialogue 17 times. So so that was the downside of doing something from art first, because it wasn't sort of etched in my head as much as stuff is when I go straight to script. So, and maybe that's what caused me to just keep writing. And I think it turned out better for it, but usually I don't do that much rewriting.
Okay, let's get into Dark Red. Dark Red is your Aftershock comic. And first of all, how did they approach you with coming over there and giving them something to do? Or have you done other?
Yeah, I did a book for them called Brilliant Trash, which I really like, but I don't think anybody read. It's sort of a cyberpunk superhero thing. And that was, it kind of it was victim to a bunch of stuff that when they first started, we kind of lost an artist, and we had all these problems. So Mike Martz had kind of said, let's do something else at some point, but let's try to make up for the mistakes we made on this one between us. And he said, I kind of feel like you should do a horror story. And so Dark Red was a pitch I'd been working on, and I talked to Vertigo about doing it, and I talked to other people about doing it. And everybody's always like, oh, it's such a cool idea, but you have to write the shit out of that thing. Like, that was everybody always says, like, whenever you do it, I think Mark Doyle at Vertigo said, if you do this, it has to be, you have to treat it like it's the last comic book you'll ever write. That's what Mark said. And I was like, fuck, I'm intimidated as shit to write this thing. But when I sent it to Mike, he was like, no, this is the one. I'd sent him a couple other ideas, but he kind of insisted that was the right one. So they sent me some artists, and Corin was one of them. And I kind of felt like she brought the right vibe to it. And so they paired us up, and we're working on it now. So, they announced it comes out in April. I'm on issue 3. So yeah, fuck, it feels pretty good. I think it's based on my, it's kind of something I feel like, and maybe this is what happened with Masters of the Universe Injustice too, is just that sometimes you have to write you just had to write things, like,
yeah, this is your milieu. I mean, this is kind of a sister book to Revival in some ways, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like halfway between Revival and Hack Slash. I think it's it's set in a small town. It's very much rural. It's about sort of the modern monster, but it's also kind of funny and dark. And it doesn't take itself 100% as serious. Like, it's still serious, but it has kind of that sort of snarky satire feel that Hack Slash does to some degree, where it's just sort of, we're clearly making an allegory, we're making fun of some shit, and it's kind of brutal. And it's like, I like to get to make fun of things I hate, and this allows me to do that.
That's good. Well, and honestly, I think we need more humor in our horror right now. I don't know. I mean,
it kind of fell out of favor to some degree. I know when I go to movies places, when they ask me to pitch stuff, like one of the things they always say is like, grounded and dark and not funny. Like that's always the thing. And I kind of feel like you're right. Like there's not enough of that stuff. And when it does hit, it really hits. I think it works better than anything else. Get Out is a funny horror movie. And it was
absolutely
huge, yes. A huge hit. And it takes itself seriously when it needs to, but it's satirical and it's, so this is in that vein, I guess, in a similar way that Hack Slash is. Even though the characters are taken seriously, their feelings, their plight is taken seriously. It's just that there are aspects of their world that are clearly a metaphorical shit on something that pisses me off.
So this is, as you say, it takes place in kind of rural Midwest, and it's about a guy, a vampire that's kind of living among us in this like kind of rural community.
Yeah, it takes place in a small town called Falls End, North Dakota, and it's just one of those places that is kind of the forgotten places, full of the forgotten people. In the ways that sort of culture is and financial economy has been dominated by the cities. This is one of those sort of forgotten places. It's it's off a highway and it's kind of dying. Their industry is left, and Chip, our main guy, lives there by choice. And as we see in the story, for vampires that's rare because for vampires it's really hard to survive when you're not near any other vampires. We don't have help. So him living on the outskirts and trying to make this work. I mean, he has to work at a 7-Eleven because we don't call it that. It's called Buffalo Jump in our story. But he works at an all-night gas station off the highway because he has to provide himself with somewhere to go when the sun comes up. And he has to have a car because he has to travel back and forth between his job and where he lays his coffin. And he's barely making ends meet, and he's struggling, and so that kind of sets up our story.
Interesting, working class vampire.
Yeah,
I like it. No, that's cool, man. That's really interesting. So, as you say, now, how did you guys find Corinne?
It was somebody that Mike wanted to work with, and Martz always kind of keeps a stable of people that he wants to find a book for, wants to match up with something. So she had done some stuff that he liked. She's done some horror stuff recently, and she had done some stuff at IDW, and he just thought her storytelling was really good, and that's kind of what drew me to it too, was that she was really good at acting, which like the faces and the expressions and the movements that I think is sometimes gets ignored in the drive to make things look cool as shit, but sometimes things aren't told well. So she does that. She's really great at the character acting.
Very cool. Have you had a chance to talk to her face to face, or is it mostly Skype? And
yeah, we just we're just like people with long distance working relationships. So we'll catch up, I'm sure, at some conventions. But she wasn't somebody I knew. I mean, I try to. For most of my projects, I do bring in people that I've at least had a beer with, but
yeah.
But she isn't. She's new, which is cool. I mean, it's good to expand my my collaborators, and be able to work with. And she's fairly new at this, and I'm now at this point an old, jaded, grizzled vet. So it's good to mix us, I think.
How many years now for you in comics?
Professionally, it is 19.
Wow.
I started in Yeah.
Jeez, man. Was Devil's Due? Devil's Due was the break, right?
Well, I started at doing stuff for Avatar and Dead Dog Comics when I was in 2000 when I was 23.
Okay.
And then I moved to Chicago to work at Devil's Due in 2003. So when I was 25. So
crazy.
2002. So I was 25. Shit. So I mean, I've only had this job really for about 18 years. When I first started comics, I had a job and I did comics at night, and now this is the only job I've had for 18 years.
Well, and honestly, congratulations on making it work and having that balance of both mainstream stuff. We're going to get into a Swamp Thing in a second, but yeah, I'm really glad that people like Aftershock are interested in your stuff, and also you're able to do your own stuff like with Revival and things like that. Last time we talked, we really got into where the market is right now, or was, I guess, and certainly in a year. The market has once again, I think,
it's changed.
Yes, absolutely, man, and I think there are publishers. Everyone is kind of wondering how long the monthly, 20-page or 22-page comic survives.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I had a long conversation last night with Matt Pizzolo at Black Mask because he and I kind of every once in a while just kvetch and try to understand things, but. One of the things we talked about is just this. A year ago at this time, there was this real doom and gloom that like stores were closing, and that there was this sort of perception that that 2018 was going to be like a really bad year for comics, and it wasn't. It was good, not great, but it was good, and so it's this weird thing of I don't know. No, there is no other industry where there's sort of this persistent gloom and doom, and I it's weird because we do all right. We have problems. I think one of the problems now is the lack of expansion in physical store spaces, because I do think the monthly has more years to it. I don't think it's going away, but I think to some degree there is a change overall in what is going to be the dominant sales thing for any store. I mean, I think so many stores now rely on that monthly comic book, having new floppies, I guess, every week.
Right.
And that's how you sort of front the business. And I think that part will change. I don't think it's as dominant as it was. I think most stores know that. Most stores have a wide selection of trades.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know. At what point does it become less like a newsstand and more like a bookstore? Right now it kind of exists in between. And I think also, there's to some degree, and I hate to say this because I benefit from there being a lot of content, but it seems like maybe there's too much content. And most retailers can't, they can't get everything. So
right.
Hard for them. Just this, and that's one of the things Matt and I talked about is like how many facings can a store have? If they have less facings and more copies, they make more money, right? Instead of a lot more facings and less copies. So
when you say facings, literally, it's like less titles, but more.
Yeah, what's on the shelf.
Right.
I mean, because obviously, a comic book takes up physical space, and if you have 100 titles and you only have 2 copies of each, that is less good than having 50 facings and 6 copies of each, right?
Sure.
So it's just this. It's this thing where we're in a transition that way, and I think, I think a lot of stores are kind of finding out, who their audience that keeps coming back is, because I think that's a little bit different than it was, because there is so many. There was a lot of new readers coming into this recently, and they have different habits. So you have, the female readers and the kids and all these sort of different groups of people that don't have the same habits as the traditional, comic buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with that. And also it seems even the publishers are starting to realize that and pull back. I mean, God, I had no idea. And then I was reading, things like Bleeding Cool, where they're like, all of a sudden DC has, just over 50 titles. And it's
they really went down. I think they should probably have more titles. I think, Marvel and DC being strong and having a lot of different accessible stuff is good. But I think the hard part is just like, Image Books competing with Aftershock Books, competing with Black Mask Books, competing with TKO Books, competing with Vault Books. All that stuff I think is tough as far as monthlies go. In trades, it seems like it works a little better because you can say, well, this is our science fiction fandom and this is our fantasy fandom, and have, it's a little bit easier to pick your audience for that kind of stuff, But with monthlies, you're just throwing it out there to see what sticks.
Well, and like you say too, you have to really know your audience and know what they want and curate to their taste. Which, I can appreciate the challenge. I mean, we're always so lucky being in Chicago and having the giant stores that we do that really go deep and can really provide a lot of different choices and stuff. But again, it is risky, it's an interesting time. And yeah, you're right. I mean, look at all the new publishers that have suddenly popped up, like TKO and Ahoy. It's an interesting time where I'm surprised that they are coming in and giving a shot.
It's interesting too, because I had an opportunity to have a buddy, from back in college who wanted to open a comic book store, and he asked me about, going in with him as far as investing, and I had to be like, really think about it. And I kind of in the end decided I would do it. And then I had some business troubles with one of my contractors not paying me. So I had to pull out. I couldn't couldn't give him the money because someone else didn't pay me. So, but I had to really think about it. And I kind of finally came down on like, no, I think it's a good idea to open a store. And the way he wanted to do it, I thought was good. But it was also like, I see the fears of someone wanting to do this because it's not, it doesn't have the stability that most retail wants, and you have to build an audience, and you have to do with it something that you don't have to do with so much other retail. That it's scary, man. I get it. Like I sat and looked at a business plan and went through numbers and went, holy shit,
Well, independent retailers in general. I mean, and yeah, you're right. I think it is worse for comic book stores, but God, man, I mean, it was last year or 2 years ago, the meltdown, in LA had to close down because, I think an independent retailer, it's tougher for them to hang on to good real estate than, the corporate giant comes in and puts a franchise there. And that's really shitty, but that's kind of the reality right now.
And St. Mark's too. I mean, St. Mark's was there for 36 years, and that's a great store, and it's a legend, but also they're in the Village in New York City, which, is not the neighborhood it was when they opened,
Right, it's like prime real estate now.
Prime real estate. And I mean, that's, again, like that's something that, you can discuss in the larger context, and it's something, I think about when I was writing Dark Red too, is just things have changed as far as the way cities work and the way people invest in cities, and the disinvestment in rural places and the disinvestment in like parts of cities instead of, like here in Chicago, of course, they put money downtown and they don't put it in the neighborhoods. And New York City is sort of the same way. The money goes to Manhattan and then it doesn't,
Yeah.
And you see these things, the same patterns over and over as far as, the way I think people get hurt by our system. And it makes me slowly turn into a preaching populist by the time I get to my comic stories,
When do you think you'll be doing more Image Books in the near future? Is that still, obviously Revival, I think, did great for you and Mike Norton. But yeah, I mean, is that still a viable model?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the best model still. I just, I have to sort of stagger my businesses so that I work for hire for a while, and then I build up funds, and then I have enough money to do a creator-owned book and to wait 6 months to get paid. And, it's just the way that you have to do business because you don't have the kind of upfront money to make a huge investment. You can do it, every once in a while, and then you're taking a risk. And, I'm just, I go into these periods where I'm like, well, I really need to do some work now, and I need to get someone to pay me, and then I need to be able to turn around. And now I've got 6 months where I can do my own thing and take that risk. And by God, I hope it works. And so far, I've been lucky. All my creator-owned stuff has paid off, even if it just broke even, like Colt Noble and the Megalords or Loaded Bible or something.
Sure.
They're not big hits, but they all broke even. So
that's great, man. Well, that's really great. Colt Noble was part of your. Was it Double Shot? What were you guys called when you were doing your digital comics?
Yeah.
Was that part of it?
Yeah, we did it for that. I did it for Image first, and then I did it for Double Feature.
Double Feature, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that was like, I'm always experimenting with stuff. I'm always trying shit. So, like, let's try new distribution. Like with Grave Dangers, like let's try to do, let's go with Comixology Originals and see what happens when you do a book direct to digital and there is no print. And I'm always going to try shit. I mostly get punished for it when I try it, but at least I give it a shot,
No, I understand. What do you think of, and now I'm blanking on what their name is, but the Korean publisher that's digital, that everyone is
Line Web.
What's that again?
Line Webtoons.
Yes, Webtoons, exactly. Line Webtoons, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's massive. When I went to China, they for that read show, Line Webtoon was one of the sponsors. So I met those guys then. Before they were even in the United States, they were kind of working on it. And I mean, it could be some way of the future, but it's also, I think it's kind of in a lot of ways, I don't know, it's really risky for the creators. I mean, you're doing something, really just throwing it out there amongst a whole bunch of stuff and hope that you get seen enough. And I mean, it's the same shit, I guess, but it's risky now. I think there's not a lot of Western stuff on there. It's a lot of Eastern manga style stuff.
Okay.
Which is great. A lot of different genres represented. That, like, the biggest comics on there are romance, pretty much. Almost all the biggest ones are slice of life or romance, which is amazing.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I wonder if something like that would work here, if it would end up exploiting people. I don't know. I'm watching it with a lot of interest. And I would definitely, it's funny you mention it, because I was actually, like, this weekend going through and reading all the guidelines and just sort of trying to see if there's a way I could do something there just to try it,
Sure.
But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it's a wild ass future for sure. It's the Wild West, man. I don't know where
it is. The Wild West. No, I agree with you. And again, they kind of came out of nowhere, and I'm intrigued by our friends that are writing and drawing books for them. And again, books, air quotes. Content for them. Content. Yeah, and also just the Korean market in general, as I understood it, really took to cell phone content quicker in a lot of ways a few years ago and stuff, and it's kind of very entrenched in terms like ebooks and things like that do quite well in Korea, which I find interesting. Yeah, very very cool. Now and you mentioned the horror film world. And how are things going for you in that world?
Good. We're working on revival. It's, the education was, this shit takes forever. But because we're doing it, without going through a major studio, and we're independently financing a film, and we're working with a distributor and stuff, and we should have stuff to talk about with that soon, I think. But man, it's it is hard to make stuff. It's just so fucking hard. And movies, you're talking about so much more money and so much more opposition, because the system that works for Hollywood is kind of based on the idea that they don't let in a lot of other possibilities, because the studio system relies on the old way.
Sure, the classic distribution and everything else. Right. Yeah. So I mean, it's hard, man. It's. But the guys, Luke and Brett have been working their asses off, and everything I've seen is great, and the screenplay is great, and so I'm excited, but I'm also exhausted. I don't know. I'm just so tired. I just feel like at a certain point you're just like, you just want things to be made without it being, every moment of it being the hardest thing you ever did. Like. Wow. Yeah. No, I understand. Well, and also, compared to comics, where literally, and especially some of the things that you've done where you can just draw it and put it up there and boom, okay, we're done. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just the amount of stuff that I would never have considered, but watching these guys do it, I'm glad that they have that expertise. I mean, they've worked on a lot of films, so they know, the stuff like you can't skip a union breakfast on a Sunday and all this sort of stuff that you're like, oh, hey, that's a whole thing, So yeah, it's been interesting to watch. I mean, I love film. I think it's like the thing I like second only to comics, I guess. And, I do know I would like to go see some of the stuff I've created up on screen, but I'm not 100% sure how much I'd want to work in film now that I mean, maybe, but like watching this, be like, oh, this is a lot of work. This is so much work.
No, I understand. Yeah, it's an interesting time, and it is. I appreciate you like kind of letting us in, and the other creators as well that have these development deals and are moving along with their projects. And yeah, it's going from comics to film is definitely interesting. Is the afterlife of Revival? It's funny to describe it that way given the content of the story. But yeah, how's it? I mean, is it still like a store still buying the trades, and is it doing okay?
Yeah, I mean the 2 quarters ago, I guess. So last year at this time was like the most we ever made on Revival. So like there is an afterlife for this kind of thing, and I think part of it is we wrapped it, and people were like, the general vibe was, hey, it ended well,
Good.
Like so it like really helped us because people went, all right, fuck it, I'll go back and read it now. I heard it ended well, which is so weird. But I mean, I've talked about this before, but I think to some degree people just want to know, like people would be happy to know the ending of a movie if they were sure that it was satisfying, then they'd go see it.
Yeah, I mean? No, I understand. Sure.
So to some degree, I think there's a little bit of that going on with Revival, whereas like everyone knew it was a contained story, and they're like, well, I could invest in this, or I could just wait to hear if it's decent, and if people tell me it's good, then I'll check it out. So, and I think for the most part, I think people felt like we got to the ending that it needed. So it helped us for sure. But that made me suddenly realize, like, my God, what if you blew the ending on something?
Sure.
If you're George R.R. Martin and you're working on all this Game of Thrones shit, and there's this anticipation, and you get to the end and you fuck it up, it's like, holy shit.
Well, how many TV shows? How many TV shows do you have a bad last episode? I mean, as great as Seinfeld was, it was like, all right. That last episode was like,
hard
some people.
What do you choose? Yeah.
Yeah. But I know Battlestar Galactica, very content. Lost. I mean, that's the thing. A lot of these great shows, it's like, really? That's it? All right.
Yeah, for sure.
So no, it's, I can appreciate that. There was something else I wanted to ask regarding Revival in terms of, did it teach you, have you learned any lessons in terms of, okay, the next time I do a long image series, did it, do you think was Revival the right length? Would you think that it might work better? Future stories might work better if they were shorter? Because that's the thing that I think is the big equation, is the sustained interest in a lot of these ongoing, image books that you guys all put out, and women. That sometimes there's that initial blush of, oh, this is really cool, and then you get to issue 30 or beyond, and it's like, okay, how much longer?
Yeah, I would say when we were at, let's say, issue 30 or 35, I was like, what are we doing? This is too long. I should never do something this long. But I would say now I'm changed a little bit because it's the right amount of content, I think, for people going into something that they've heard is, good or that they might be interested in. So they can get, 8 trades worth of something or 4 hardcovers worth of something. That's the right amount now.
Okay.
That said, I think if I was doing something new and I knew it was going to be finite, I would probably have it go 20 or 24, maybe, like somewhere in there.
Interesting. Okay.
Because that's, 4 trades, and that's 2 hardcovers, and that's 2 years, which I think is right about the right time to keep people interested and also to keep yourself interested. I feel like that's probably what I would do.
Okay.
If I could, I mean, on the other hand, something like Hack Slash is built to just go on for as long as I have ideas, and if I have an idea,
sure,
I can do it. So that's really nice too. Like I had an idea for Chaos crossover, and I told Dynamite, they're like, yeah, let's do it. And being able to just do that is great. I couldn't be like, oh, I had an idea for a crossover revival with Injustice. Like, it's not, it can't be done, right? It's much more focused. It's much smaller by design. So I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. I think, we're going to see more people, and a lot of these smaller publishers are going to try this stuff, doing, announcing something as a 16-issue run or as a 20-issue run to see, and saying like, this is a big story, but it's not forever.
Right?
Someone's going to try it. So,
well, that's the thing. I mean, Hack Slash is kind of a good container to put Cassie in a bunch of different situations when the inspiration hits you.
Right.
Whereas Revival was just one story. And, right. That's, so yeah, they're different animals, definitely.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Now, was that Chaos crossover? Was that last year? Or was it,
it's going right now.
Oh, excuse me.
Issue 3 comes out this week, I think, or, or next week.
Excellent. Are you writing that, or did you?
I'm writing it and doing the cover. So, it's just big and fun and crazy, and it's just like, all the stuff I wouldn't normally do with Hack Slash, like Cassie running around with a giant sword in a, like Jack Kirby crazy end of the universe thing. Like, it's nutty and fun, and I'm having a hell of a lot of fun with it. I think it's one of my, more inspired Hack Slash pairings for sure.
That's awesome. Very cool. Who's your artist?
The guy Seeley. I worked with him on the series that just came out through Image with Teeny, and he's awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, so
that's awesome. Yeah, last time we talked, Teeny was doing Hack Slash stuff, so that's awesome.
Yeah. Now she's highfalutin and too big for me, so that's all right.
Good for her. Atta girl. No, yeah, absolutely. No, I'm really happy for her. I like how
that's great.
Doors have opened for her, and also audiences have been receptive to her writing. She's a great writer. Yeah, and that's what happens, man. You find you've rubbed up against both great writers and artists and stuff that have gone on to bigger and better things. I mean, I just wrapped up a conversation with Tom King last month before I got sick. And, I know you guys had fun with your collaboration and everything, and I'm glad you guys are still hanging out, and when I see you guys at conventions and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that guy's amazing. It's so weird to be the guy who was like the old pro with this new guy, and that new guy became like the new Alan Moore. It's such a weird...
Pretty much.
It's a very weird thing. I mean, it's weird. I don't understand... kind of how I fit into all this and whether it will matter in the end. It's sort of like, I guess it's like being like Len Wein when you hired Alan Moore for Swamp Thing, even though you made up Swamp Thing.
Sure.
It's got to be kind of weird for Alan, for Len to have looked at that and been like, oh yeah, Alan defined a new genre with my guy. And that is to some degree, I guess, the way it is with Grayson. It's like, that was sort of an initial idea that Tom and I came up with, and I put a lot of the earlier stuff into it, and then he just rose like a phoenix out of it and just went on to Batman, is making, like winning all the awards. And I mean, Mr. Miracle is one of the most sort of complete and competent examples of comic book storytelling maybe ever made. So it's just amazing to watch it go on and do all that stuff.
I always love when this happens. I mean, I think back to, and through Word Balloon, I've, watched people like when Brubaker was mentoring Fraction, when Fraction was mentoring Remender, when Bendis was helping Hickman out early on and learning, the mainstream ropes and stuff like that. So no, I think it's cool. And, I think it's great. And, I'm intrigued, and I'm curious to see how, I know DC has gone one step further, and people like Snyder are running, writer classes and things like that. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of talent develops from that kind of nurturing. So I think that's smart. I think it only helps the business having, experienced people helping out new writers and showing them the ropes, and,
trained replacement.
Well, no, but seriously, like, you and Tom are different writers, and it's that, by the way, that's the other interesting thing, is when two writers do get together on a book, and it is something different than what they would have done individually. And I felt that way about Grayson. I really felt that way about Kurt Busiek and Jeff Johns back in the day. They collaborated on a Superman arc, and it was different from a Jeff story, and it was different from a Kurt story. You know, stuff like that. So, I really like the collaboration. I actually really miss it. It was one of my favorite books to work on was Grayson, because just getting to call up Tom and be like, okay, let's talk about what this is going to be, and knowing that we agreed on essentially all the basics, and that and that what we would be doing differently would just be how we were telling it, or and adding our own sort of flair or interest. Like, that was really fun. It was a lot of fun, and I feel like that's kind of what I miss. Most of my writing stuff is just me staring at a screen, having conversations with myself in my head. Sure.
Whereas when I drew all the time, it was a lot more collaborative. I could sit and draw and talk to people while I did it. I could do all these sort of things that I can't do now. So, Grayson was tons of fun. I wish I could do something like that again.
Before we get to Swamp Thing, you did Green Lanterns for a while?
Yeah.
And how was that experience?
I mean, I really liked it, and I thought I really liked the character of Jess, and I don't have like a huge love for Green Lantern history or anything. I thought maybe that would be the advantage, being able to come into it and be like, I just like these characters, and I want to take them into new directions. And I mean, my pitch was exactly the one that Grant Morrison did, except he included and then they fight God. So I feel like I was on the right track, but yeah, it's weird. I mean, I don't know. To some degree, I feel like that was the book where the readers just didn't. I don't know. I don't know if they were just kind of not super satisfied with the characters and the fact that it was sort of it's a book about newbies, and I think it should be aimed at new readers. But I feel like, I don't know, with that one, I didn't make it connect, and I feel a little bit sort of, I don't know, like I failed it a little bit. I mean, I had a ton of fun, and I thought I did what it needed to be, but I also feel like I should have made it a hit. I should have made it huge. I should have, if it was possible, could I do that, And I don't think I quite got there. Like, I sort of hold myself to the standard, like, well, I got to fucking Jeff Johns this thing. I got to make all of a sudden people go, whoa, Green Lanterns is cool. Like, but I don't know. I don't think I did it. But I mean, I had a lot of fun. I love writing science fiction. I love writing space stuff. But I think that was a hard book in the end to sell to people. I think, that maybe the passion for Green Lantern is really about the huge world and all the, that expansive universe that Jeff made up and that other people contributed to. And for me, it's like I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in people having superhero problems. Like, you're in space, you're a cop with the most respected badge in the universe, and when you get home, you can't get a job at a restaurant. Like, that's interesting to me. And maybe I didn't read The Room like I should have, or something. I don't know. It's interesting. I think about it a lot. But you get a gig and you work your ass off and you make something you like, and you hope that it resonates with other people.
Fair enough. I hear you, man. Okay, let's take a break and get into our sponsor. This portion of Word Balloon brought to you by Aftershock Comics, the industry's fastest-growing independent publishing company, promoting both new and established comic audiences to read dangerously. They're claiming 2019 as the year of reading dangerously. As a publisher of many of the most talked-about independent titles of the past few years, things like Marguerite Bennett's Animosity, Garth Ennis' A Walk Through Hell, Dark Arc from Cullen Bunn and Juan Doe, and, of course, Donny Cates and Baby Teeth, Aftershock is pushing the envelope even further this year with new releases and ongoing series that continue to thrill, chill, and challenge both imaginations and sensibilities. Aftershock is working with top writers and artists and some of the brightest new stars in the creative community. Some of the new titles that are coming out this year, things like Stronghold with Phil Hester and Ryan Kelly, Oberon, a new supernatural series featuring Ryan Parrott, Dark Red, a vampire living in rural America from Tim Seeley, and things like Out of the Blue and Horde. They're going to cut across all genres to take readers far beyond the comfort zones. Now, in the weeks ahead, we'll be talking to more Aftershock creators about their books, but you don't have to wait. Go to their website. You'll find full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on these books to order through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. All right, let's get back into our conversation now on Word Balloon. So you're doing a new X-Men book. Tell me about the new X-Men book.
Well, so it's called Age of X-Man. It's a sort of alternate universe crossover event. It's crafted by Lonnie Thompson, Zach Nadler, or did I fuck that up? Zach Thompson, Lonnie Nadler. Sorry, it's been a long day. Sorry, dudes. But yeah, it's this one of those things where the event takes over for the publishing schedule, and all the books become a new thing, sort of like Age of Apocalypse did in the 90s. So
okay,
yeah. So this one, I'm writing Apocalypse and the X-Tracts, which is in this world, which is sort of ruled by the X-Men, and it's a utopia. Apocalypse is the guy who sees the cracks in the system, and he's this sort of resistance guy who. He's kind of like a guru. He's like he wears the Nehru collar and he preaches about peace and love. And he leads this group of X-Men who are all like the sort of counterculture to this, really controlled utopian vision of the Marvel universe. So it's like the anti Age of Apocalypse. That was a dystopia, and this is like this perfect world. But of course, and the mutants rule, and everyone is a mutant, and but to keep that system in place, they've outlawed relationships and love and family, because all those things, if you're X-Men, is the thing that eventually kills you, right? I mean, if you're X-Men, eventually someone in your family goes to the future and comes back and fucking murders you. So, so in this world, that's all that is illegal. It's monitored by their psychics, so like it's this very, we've got these resistance fighters, and they're dirty and they're scrappy, and one of their members turns into a cloud of psychotropic drugs, and it's pretty crazy and definitely like one of the weirdest things I've ever made, for sure. But I love it, and I just finished issue 4 today, and I was like, holy shit, I fucking pulled it off. That's a tearjerker.
So is it a 5-issue? How many?
It's 5 issues, yeah.
Okay. And are they new characters that Apocalypse is leading, or are they?
It's Dazzler and iBoy and his son Genesis. Genesis, also known as Evan, and who else is on it? If I'm fucking this up. Oh, and the new character is called Unveil, and she's she's the one that turns into. She looks like a '70s blacklight poster, like. The black lady with the big afro and colored in day glow colors that glows under a black light. She's that.
Interesting. Very interesting. That's cool. All right, there you go.
But
go ahead.
It's still pretty seriously, and it's pretty fun. And working in the X-Men world, I think would be intimidating to me if it wasn't for the fact that like this is a little more limited. Like I know how this world works, and I'm not tied to all those tons of crazy ass X-Men relationships that would drive me insane.
Sure.
It's a little smaller, but I love it. I'm having a great time with it. It's drawn by Selva Espin. He's a pretty good fit for it. I think he's drawn some like really good open line, wide open, colorful, stuff that can be filled in with tons of crazy colors and yeah, Guru Apocalypse is one of my favorite things ever. It's awesome.
Who's editing that?
That is Jordan White, my old buddy.
Of course, our good friend Jordan White, absolutely.
Yeah, and Chris Robinson, Annalisa Bissa, and so those three are tackling this monstrosity. But yeah, like Zach and Lonnie are also they're new young guys, and they crafted this insanely detailed world with all this shit figured out. Like it's amazing. And they're just kind of show running it too. So when I turn something in, they read it and I talk to them about it. So it's pretty cool. I mean, I don't think this is like their third or fourth comic series. I don't think when I was doing that I could have just stepped in and be like, yeah, here, hand me the keys to the X-Men.
Yeah, Jesus. Wow. No, that's very impressive.
Props there, fellas.
Damn straight. So tell me about Swamp Thing, and what are your plans for Alec?
Well, this one is interesting because it's the direct-to-Walmart Swamp Thing book.
Tell me about that. I was wondering if you were doing any. I didn't realize it was the direct-to-Walmart Swamp Thing book.
Well, I did the first couple issues of the Wonder Woman one, like last whatever this in the summer, and then there had been talk about trying out Swamp Thing, so they did this Halloween special. And it was kind of a surprise hit. So they said, well, we'd like to continue from that. Azzarello and Capello did the story for that, and so it was just like, here's the only thing we have is this short story. So pick up from there, and give us, accessible Swamp Thing stories, like something that someone who doesn't regularly read comics but stops at a Walmart and picks up a can of soda and a beef stick and a comic book can understand, So of course I was like, well, I grew up in the middle of nowhere without access to a comic book store. And when I went to a comic store, the things I would want to read would be like coolest shit possible. So of course I have Swamp Thing like fighting, basically like a slasher and a monster truck and like all this stuff. And I kind of used as my template the idea that when Bernie and Len did the book.
This is exactly what I was going to say, Tim. That is exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like the beginnings of Swamp Thing. Go on.
Well, yeah. So I think their pitch was, let's do a monster book about a monster who fights all new versions of the shit we loved as a kid, right? So the first Len and Bernie stuff is like their version of Frankenstein and sort of their take on Dracula and their take on the Wolfman and all the stuff that they grew up with as kids, seeing on late night TV, all the public domain, or not the public domain, but all the Universal monster movies and all that sort of stuff. So they grew up to guys who were like, let's do our take on that. And they made this, horror story, which they got to do new versions of familiar things. So I used that as my template. And I said, I'm going to do Swamp Thing from the perspective of a guy who grew up in the 80s. So they take on like, new versions of like the slasher trope, and they take a new version of the ghost trope and the, that kind of thing. So that's kind of my way of organizing the story around a principle, which I think that's actually one thing I learned from Tom was make a rule, and then your creativity will come from dealing with the rule, right? And so Tom uses it as a format thing. Like he'll say every panel in this book will be, long or it'll be 9 of them on a page or whatever. And your creativity comes from dealing with restrictions, right? So for this, that was the template. It has to be like a modernized version of what Bernie and Len did. But like, obviously it exists in the same world as Alan Moore's Swamp Thing and everybody who came back or after that, Mark Miller and Nancy Collins and all those sort of takes on Swamp Thing where it's much more metaphysical and much more sort of dark fantasy and sort of stuff. So it's combining those things, but trying to tell something new and accessible. So, I didn't want to go heavily into like stuff that's come since where it's like the green and
Council of Trees and all that stuff. Yeah.
It's like I use it. I can kind of mention it. I can use it as a outline, but I don't want to make that the point. Like those things exist for access, but they're not the focus. So like, as far as anyone needs to know, this is a guy who, got covered in chemicals, fell burning into a swamp, and came out as a monster. And he's not sure if he's a man or if he's a plant. And he's teamed with this witch who's kind of dragging him along to all these missions because she has something that she wants, and she's kind of knowing that he feels responsible to some degree for these things that affect humanity that are not human. So it's a true monster story. It's like our sort of I kind of base it's a little bit like how I did Hack Slash, where Vlad was the guy who looked like the monster, but he was kind of the good heart, and Cassie, who looked like the girl and the victim, was actually kind of the monster.
Sure,
that's what we're doing here. Like Briar the witch is kind of more of a monster than Alec is, but he needs her because she directs him to these things.
Interesting. Who's your artist?
It starts out with Mike Perkins. Issue 1 is Mike Perkins.
Great. I love Mike. Mike's great. He's amazing.
Issues 2 and 3 are Joelle Jones.
Terrific.
And she'd always kind of wanted to do Swamp Thing, so this was their, thank you for doing Catwoman and being awesome. Let's have you do these Swamp Thing stories. So she drew the shit out of him.
I bet she did. No, that's man. I'll tell you, God, Darrington's doing Batman with Bendis, and Kubert's doing Superman with Tom. No, this is great stuff. Who was drawing your Wonder Woman?
Rick Leonardi.
Wow. I mean, there you go.
Yeah. So they do. Yeah. I mean, they put these are very public facing. They have to be like as good as we can do them. And
sure.
I think it's pretty cool. And the reason Tom gets really excited to write the Superman one because he gets to write 12 pages of Superman a month instead of 48 pages of Batman. It's like a little lighter commitment. It's more. There's less continuity. There's less, and that you're making them for new people, which I think excites comic creators to know that you're making something that someone who might not know this stuff is getting to see.
Will Alec and her name's Briar, the witch?
Yeah.
Are they gonna be exploring the DC horror universe?
Not at first, but yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't do a story like this if I don't get to at some point bring in Zatanna and Blue Devil, and I have to do that stuff. So
Deadman, people like that.
Creeper,
sure.
Yeah. Like I want to do the DC horror universe characters are my favorite. That's my favorite side of DC. So, like Demon and Constantine and
cool.
Constantine and all those horror characters. Definitely, I put a lot of them in Justice versus Master Universe because of my affection for them, but now it's like this is the focus. So
that's awesome. Yeah, man, that's terrific. I'm telling you, and I don't know because we live in the same area. Have you gone to that Walmart near us on Broadway and looked for the DC books there?
I have. Yeah.
Are they there?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then I'm looking in the wrong aisle because.
They're in it's weird. They're at the counter they're next to the registers. They're in that.
They are by the cashiers. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, and mostly when I see them, they're all gone.
There you go too.
When I was back in Wausau, I think they were gone when I went there. So, we don't have access. We live in Chicago, which doesn't have Walmarts. Really, we don't have big box stores here.
No, we have
suburbs.
You and I, we live near a Walmart grocery store that has a pharmacy. But like I said, I don't know if the Walmart like you have seen them at that Walmart.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
I think so. Right. Yeah. I don't know. Everything's blended together. But yeah,
I understand. I can appreciate that too. But I mean, they're when I lived in the burbs, I was closer to a couple other Walmarts and stuff. I haven't gone back to those yet. And no, that's the only Walmart I go to. And
and I love the idea. I mean, I know it's contradictory to the idea that we want comic book stores to open in rural places, but also like Walmart exists and people go there all the time, and they Walmart. So having it in front of people who don't have comic book stores to me is so huge. I mean that's my big. Dedication to this is in trying to make the best stuff is knowing that there's going to be some kid somewhere who picks this thing up and it's the first comic he's ever seen, and he's going to open it up and he's going to see Swamp Thing fight a monster truck, and he's going to go, "This is the greatest thing ever." So I'm just trying, and it'll be drawn by Joelle Jones, so it'll look amazing, and so that's kind of the goal.
That's excellent. And do you know what the other reprint stuff in the book is and from? Is it other Swamp Thing stories? Is it other DC horror stuff?
It's Shadow Pact and I'm trying to think what's all in there. It's fairly recent stuff. I think it's Blue Devil. The Blue Devil from a little while ago. I think the new 52 Blue Devil I think is in there.
Okay.
And Shadow Pact and Zatanna, I think. I had it sitting on my table and I lost it. But yeah, they do some really smart reprint stuff, some really accessible stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I have to assume that this will, it'll really delight some weird kid who didn't know that this is what he needed in his life, or she.
Hey man, well that's that was the it factor for us when we were kids and we saw our first comics. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's a bold experiment, and I understand why they're doing it the way they're doing it, and I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, there are just people who will never walk into a comic store, but definitely will walk into a Walmart, so why not be there? And be there with something unique, and also have your best people doing it. I do hope, and I keep saying this, and I don't expect an answer from the creators because I'm sure if they do know, they're not allowed to say. But I do hope eventually that these stories do wind up in the direct market. I would think that they'd almost have to.
Yeah, I think there'll be trades. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it makes more sense to do it that way, to collect the new parts into some kind of trade, and then sell that at the comic book store versus, and you could sell it at Walmart as well, but you can sell it, I don't think the content is exclusive that way. I'm not sure, but I think it's going to be collected for access because why wouldn't you do that? So.
Yeah, man. No, it makes sense. Well, dude, Jesus, you got a full plate, and I'm glad that things are going well. And as always, I appreciate your balance of when you work for other people and when you do your own thing. And like I always say, you're one of those high concept guys. I always think your ideas are incredibly interesting and make for good comics, and certainly hopeful that revival will translate into the vision that you and Mike had for it. And continued success as always. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and I'm thrilled with the new projects. Keep it up.
And I will give you a trade of Injustice versus Master Universe because I want you to read it, John.
It would be my pleasure.
I want you to. In fact,
dude, I'm telling you.
I'll give you some stuff. Well, I'll come to you because I know you're on one foot, and I'll bring you.
I am on one foot right now. Soon to be back on two.
Swamp thing. I will give one to you.
Oh, thanks, buddy. You're awesome. Excellent. We'll leave it right there. That was good. That was funny. Was that cool? Was there? Did we miss anything?
No, that's good. I think.
All right, I'm
cool.
stopping.
I mean, we didn't talk about.
There you go, Tim Seeley. I really look forward to our next conversation, both on the air and off the air. Again, I'm very fortunate being in the Chicago community. We've got so many great creators locally, and I've been very pleased to become friends with many of them and enjoy hearing their thoughts as they continue their creative process. I hope you enjoyed today's Word Balloon. It was brought to you again by the League of Word Balloon listeners. If you'd like to subscribe to Word Balloon via Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/wordballoon, or you can go to the Patreon ad right there on the front page of wordballoon.com. Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. Lots of great comic books have been coming out the last couple of years from Aftershock. Joe Pruitt, Mike Martz are rounding up incredible talent, both new and old. People like Marguerite Bennett and Garth Ennis and Cullen Bunn and other people like, Phil Hester and of course our buddy Tim Seeley, who we spoke to today. Lots of great creators, interesting concepts, and don't forget, this year, 2019, they're calling it the Year of Reading Dangerously. Check out some of the new books that are coming out in the next few weeks and months. Things like Stronghold from Phil Hester and Ryan Kelly, great team-up. Oberon, a new supernatural series by Ryan Parrott. And Out of the Blue and Horde, just to name a few. In the weeks ahead, we'll be talking to more Aftershock creators about their books, but right now you can just go right to their website. There are incredible books from friends like Paul Jenkins, and Brian Azzarello has a great series that he did with Eduardo Riso. Check out full story descriptions, preview pages, and the diamond codes on these books and more to order through your local shop at AftershockComics.com. Thanks again for listening to today's Word Balloon. There's a companion Word Balloon episode out there today, and it is my conversation with Chris Iliopoulos. A great talk. I hope you'll check it out. We talk about his wonderful work on the Brad Meltzer and his books, the I Am children's biographies, and the new PBS animated show that's coming based on those incredible books. I Am Billie Jean King, out now. And there's a whole bunch more waiting for you and the children in your life. Good stuff. Check it out. And come back to Word Balloon in the next couple days, and we'll have another interview waiting for you. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2019.